Hello, and welcome to the latest in our Ericsson UnBoxed Social Series broadcasts, where each week I take a detailed look at different aspects of communication technology in the company of the industry's leading experts. Now, we are all moving towards an era where all transportation will be connected, autonomous, shared, and fossil free. In addition, vehicle customization is a significant market trend requiring transformation across the entire manufacturing process. How will tech trends like the evolving digital infrastructure and 5G change things for the automobile industry? To help me with that, I am joined by three guests today. Åsa Tamsons is the SVP and Head of Business Area Technologies and New Businesses at Ericsson. Åsa, it is lovely to see you again. Welcome back. Thomas Olsen is the founding engineer of einride. And Thomas, I understand that you have a big announcement today that we are going to be talking about in a little while.
Yeah, great to be
And
here. It's super exciting.
We are delighted to have you here. And Marie Hogberg, Head of Connectivity Strategy at Volvo Cars. Welcome to all of you. Now, the way it's going to work today is I get the chance to ask our esteemed guests questions in the first part. But in the second part, we will be taking questions on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Already, we have viewers joining in from all over the world. I'm excited to say, please do ask your questions throughout the broadcast because I'll try and sneak a few in as and when they come in. So let us start off with the big picture. So starting the conversation by looking at the big picture. Also, what are the most significant changes taking place in the auto industry right now?
Well, thank you, Alex. First of all, exciting to be here. And I think if I take a step back and look at it, on both not only the the automobile sector, but also the transport sector at large. If you look at a classic automotive OEMs, they actually moved from being engineering companies very focused on mechanical engineering to now being tech companies and software-centric tech companies. And that's very much driven by the car itself, like most products becoming more and more software-defined. And that's, of course, are changing the landscape, both of what type of services you can offer, what cost structure you have, but also what type of talent you need. So I think that's a huge shift that's been going on, and that's been an evolution for not the last 5-10 years, probably over the last 20 years. But I think on top of that, we also seen over the last couple of years an increasing demand on the industry to also help contribute to meeting the sustainability goals. And since the transport sector is a big driver of the emissions we have today, that's an important role. Both every company and every player in this ecosystem has, but also if you look at the overall industry. And then on top of that, we have over the last 2 years dealt with COVID and all the challenges that have, put on many automotive OEMs, really drastic demand, both demand shorter initially was a supply crisis, then it became a demand crisis. And I think on the supply side, we still have a huge issue when it comes to chip shortages. So I think if you just look at those type of challenges, I mean, everyone who's working in this industry and trying to make progress and both getting products out, make the customers happy, and also drive the innovation on the right path for better products, more sustainable offerings. I mean, you're all heroes who work in this industry. And I would say, underpinning all of this, we've seen a couple of trends for some time now. They're running in parallel and all play a role both when it comes to the software-defined car and software-defined services, as well as how we meet the sustainability targets. And that's what we call CARE. So we see cars and services in the car need to be connected. We also see a progress when it comes to autonomous drive, where most cars today that produce at least semi assisted, right? So it's not it's partially not fully autonomous drive, but you actually have some smart system built into the car. Then we also see redefine. We see sharing business models. I mean, Uber and the similar companies were one of the first one pioneering with those, but we see that increasingly with some of the sub-brands within Volvo, but we also have einride here today, which actually made redefine your whole business model. And the last part is electric, which is an important part to make sure we can actually deliver more sustainable future and more sustainable transport for us going forward. And I think it's super exciting we have both Volvo and einride here, because they're both, I would say, front runners when it comes to these trends, and also how you apply them in developing, frankly, future companies that are relevant both to customers and contribute to the society at large. So very excited to be here together with our other two guests.
I'm impressed by the amount of challenges and opportunities that you've just laid out there. It seems like a really rich space also for new innovations and applying different types of, whether it's business models or technologies. But coming back to Ericsson, what role does Ericsson play in this technological revolution?
Well, I think if we start off, I think Thomas said it well in one of the pre-conversations here today, and that is, how at least and einride are almost assuming everything is connected. That's the foundation, that's the starting point. And I think that's a reality we're living with for some time. But if you look at it without the connectivity infrastructure, without the 3GPP standard of cellular technology, it's hard for many of the things we take for given today to work. Today it's using our phones in the way we're doing it, regardless of where we are in the world. But we expect the same service for cars. And here I think it's both the new generation of networks as well as the new wave of network rollout will be extremely important for transportation. Many of the networks that exist in the world today, they were not designed or planned for following the roads, because people didn't think about using mobile phones or even that technology primarily for the cars. So it was built out in cities and for where consumers used their phones and really needed the phones. And I think when it went from fixed to mobile, it was not, for sure that you needed to have perfect coverage to manage video streaming down on the road. I think today when you build out the mobile network infrastructure, most of the operators think very differently, because now the business case of building out along the road to provide all the services that you need for transport, both between the car, from and to the car, as well as entertainment in the car, is completely different. So I think one is we provide the leading infrastructure. We work with our customers to make sure we have the coverage where mobile connectivity is needed. The other part is, of course, the huge amount of research we put in every year to improve the connectivity and the 3GPP standard. And here 5G, which is the fifth generation mobile technology, will come with capabilities such as a reaction time that is faster than the human brain can actually react. And that plays a huge difference when it comes to, be able to react to hazards on the road. When you can start to have that reaction time, you can actually enable autonomous drive, and you can enable assistant drive in a way that is actually, provides superpowers compared to what the human can today. But it's also, of course, other capabilities such as how much you can upload from the car, not only down to the car while you're there. So there are lots of benefits, and I would say that's one of the big areas we play an important role. Then we are also investing. So today, within our IoT business, we actually provide the services to manage that connectivity across operators, across country borders for many of the car OEMs in the world. And that's not about, a unique technology in that sense. It's more about scale and global presence and be able to manage seamlessly and with a good customer experience the connectivity management for any OEM. So they don't have to think about I need to have separate contracts, or even think about have different platforms to be able to support the car fleets and have the right interfaces if they wanted those software upgrades over time. So that's a second area. Then I think there's a third area where we have a lot of momentum right now. We see the rise of private networks, and you may ask, well, in a world of automotive and transport, where is that really relevant? But if you look at einride and where you look at the early cases of autonomous, it's typically in confined areas like a logistic hub. And what we then can provide is a private network that only is dedicated to that site. That means we can actually start to deliver on some of the applications that may take some time until you have it fully covered and capable in the broader network. But that we can do with confined areas. And I think some of the applications that einride is pioneering there is really enabled by us being able to provide those type of private networks.
It's really interesting what you're laying out here, because I think that in some ways we are returning to the idea of the road system as the communication infrastructure, whereas we had tried very much to kind of liberate ourselves from that. It seems that we don't have flying cars yet. We're not gonna get there until the next innovation. And actually, Maria, I'd like to turn to you now and look at the manufacturer's point of view. Electrification is one of those elements that also was just talking about. It is undoubtedly the biggest technological transformation in the automotive industry, in the history of the automotive industry. At Volvo Cars, how are you responding to these demands?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you for inviting me to this show, first of all. Well, I completely agree with you. I mean, electrification is dramatically changing the automotive industry, and so does Volvo Cars, given this trend that we see. I think it's important for all of us as individuals, as companies, as organizations all around the world to think about what can we do to stop the ongoing climate change. And since the car industry for so many years have been part of the problem, actually, we today need to be part of the solution. So at Volvo Cars, we have stated very, very, very clear targets when it comes to sustainability and electrification. As for example, we have said that by 2040, we should be a circular company as well as a climate neutral company. And already 2025, that's only 4 years away, we should reduce our CO2 footprint by 40%. So then you can ask yourself, how do we do that? Yeah, we work with this in 3 areas. It's supply chain emissions, operational emissions, but maybe most important really to get the large number down is the tailpipe emissions. And the way for us to reach our targets here, and of course also to contribute to a sustainable planet, is to become an electric car company. And we have communicated and set the milestone that by 2030, we should be a fully electric car company. And already 2025, half of our sales should be electric. So we are really full in on electric, and sustainability, as I said, it's super high on the agenda.
I'm delighted to hear that, because the more electric cars there are on the roads, the more infrastructure there will be to support those electric cars. But on the flip side, another sort of parallel road, if you were, within this space, is the idea of the automatic, the autonomous vehicle. How is Volvo Cars meeting that need?
Well, as you said, this is another big shift that the automotive industry is going through right now. Right now, I see a lot of developments for electrification and autonomous driving, at least from a traditional car OEM perspective, happening in parallel. But since we are transforming to become electric, they will definitely meet in the not that far future. And of course, we have automated functions in the cars already today. But what I think is interesting here also, I mean, at Volvo Cars, we talk about the freedom to move in a personal, sustainable, and safe way, which as such is very interesting because we are never mentioning the car in this vision that we have that is important for everything we do. And I think the automatic driving use case very well fits into this vision, because it's really about the freedom to move in a personal way, giving back time to the people's using our cars when transporting themselves from A to B. And of course, features related to safety and the importance of that comes in here as well as sustainability. But what I think also is very interesting to look into and discuss even further when it comes to automated vehicles, it is the fact that, they are really a foundation. You know, the foundation why we can do a lot of good things here is really the software defined car, as also mentioned in the beginning. I mean, thanks to this, we will have a lot of sensors and LiDAR technologies in the car, and thanks to this we can gather a lot of data, and with that data we can constantly work on these functions, for example the autonomous functions, and thanks to the possibility to remotely update the car with new software, we can on a continuous basis improve the customer experience when it comes to these features. And I think that as such, the software-defined car in combination with over-the-air updates is really another game changer that is of course not only important for autonomous driving, it's also important for, I would say, everything in the car, since more or less the car is built of software today. Yeah.
And that that inspires me to turn to Thomas, because so much of what einride is about is that is that up-down stream of data. Can you tell me a little bit about einride, and also significantly about the partnerships that you're building? I believe you have a big partnership that's being announced today.
Well, we're actually launching into the American market today, and it's been a goal for us since many years. Because obviously being able to change this industry is why we exist, because it needs to become sustainable. And the way it's set up today, that's going to take a long time, and it needs to happen faster. And that's why we created this company, to make that transition happen. And when you look at autonomous vehicles, why do we do that? Well, the reason is to be able to drive the transition to electric freight and sustainable freight even faster than before. I think we're a software company from the ground up. Some of the early people in the company have previously been working at great software companies, like your Spotifys and Klarnas and some of the unicorns across Sweden that's grown out globally. But combining that then with people who try to drive this change inside of the OEMs, and coming over from there, because it was hard to change huge companies, and it's easier to drive that change in a new, different way from a different angle. And we know that the industry we're in is facing huge challenges. When you go electric, the aftermarket goes away, and when you go autonomous, your main customer base goes away, and you need to find new way of earning money while selling anything. And we have a fundamentally different approach, where we look at the problem we're trying to solve, moving goods from point A to B, and solving everything in the full ecosystem that's needed to make that happen, with some of our big customers that don't have fleets of their own and need to move that goods in a sustainable and efficient way, really. So yeah, it's
Partnerships are
something I'm very
crucial, are they
passionate
not,
about.
within this? Yeah, partnerships in this space are crucial. You mentioned, not just the partnerships between people who don't have a fleet, but also technology partnerships between einride and other companies. Can you tell me a little bit about those and how you negotiate and navigate that? Because what we are dealing with ultimately is we're dealing with, a large moving piece of hardware.
Yeah, no, partners are crucial. And we've been working with Ericsson for a long time now on that topic as well when it comes to connectivity. Because exactly like what said here before, that connectivity is the basis for making this happen. Because we need to collect all the different pieces of the ecosystem and have them transmit data continuously in the amount and precision that we need. And with that, we can fit it all together into one chain and drive efficient electric freight. Because one thing we're afraid of when it comes to autonomous freight is that it begins scaling out on top of diesel freight, because that's what's existing today. But if the infrastructure gets set for that, then it's going to take a long time before it's time to transition to electric freight. So we think it's important that autonomous vehicles directly go over to electric freight, which is going to be the cheapest in the end. But the big difference is that you really need to have data on all different parts of your ecosystem and have all of it connected, because otherwise you're not going to be able to drive cost-efficient electric freight. So it's very much the basis. And obviously we have lots and lots of partnerships across our entire build chain, and all focus on also kind of reaching sustainable freight.
That the data issue, the data point, and the autonomous aspect really suggests to me that that is where 5G becomes crucial in the development of autonomous vehicles. But are there other areas where 5G is a driver of autonomous vehicles and the type of work that you're doing?
I think, again, kind of where you get to is being able to connect it all. That's the basis. But then when we talk about the insights of the vehicles, obviously, there's a lot of data that you can potentially kind of send. And 5G enables us to send that much more easily and not have to be as picky about what we choose. That enables us to have a faster improvement loop of our overall fleet and understand the patterns even after we realize that they exist, because we could afford to save the data. But also another really important part of how we efficiently get our vehicles out there in operations with customers is remote operations. And that's something where 5G just even strengthens our safety case and makes the whole system more reliable and cheaper to run, as well as just better for our customers. And because we see that it's important to be able to have the autonomous systems work together with remote operators, remote truck drivers, if you will, that can help the overall systems to run smoothly and efficiently. So I think that those are some of the parts. And I think just when you get to even more connectivity, also with kind of personnel and having better access to data, you're going to see fantastic things just popping up, because you can make optimizations across basically just more things across the entire ecosystem.
Also, this must be music to your ears to hear Thomas singing the praises of 5G as part of the driving technology for innovation. But I'm wondering, it is so much about collaboration. When you are building these, or when you are helping to build the technologies that go into vehicles. Tell me a little bit about that collaborative process and how Ericsson is helping to collaborate to build the new technological ecosystem.
Happy to. I mean, first of all, we do think this is the digital platform for many industries forward, and we talk about transportation here. And it's not that we sat and thought about we just need to be much faster and cover more devices or be able to manage more connections and faster at a broader scale and at a lower cost. It actually started with requirements from the industry. So from the outset, when 5G started to be developed more than 10 years ago, it was done together with several of the leading players in several industries, and transportation being one of them. Because we asked, how come that while we as consumers gone completely wireless, we still have so many businesses that are still not using wireless technologies, either because the performance requirements were not there, the coverage was not there, or the cost competitiveness was not there, or because it was too complex, or it couldn't meet the safety security requirements it had. So in essence, and in a nutshell, 5G and the spec of 5G that as we know it today has been designed and developed based on the demands from the industry players. And this is, of course, done in several organizations. And if you look at transportation specifically, there are a number of organizations such as 5GAA, AECC, Drive Sweden that are there to develop regulation standards while helping innovating for the future transportation ecosystem. And those are the ones where I would say we've been actively taking part of, but also worked with players like Volvo and other leading OEMs from the outset. Before this technology becoming commercial. So it's designed by purpose. I think the second part is we've seen also the world of IT and OT in most industries are actually merging. And that means two big ecosystems are actually coming together. And then, as Thomas said, we have the telco ecosystem now coming in, being part of a mix of that. And I think that also means, and I'm sure that you will hear more about that from Marie and Thomas, if you look at their ecosystem and their partnerships they have today probably look very different compared to Thomas' legacy competitors, or where Marie was, and Volvo many years ago. So I think that says it all in many ways. But again, 5G was defined because there was a need in the market, unmet needs, and without them, we couldn't talk about autonomous. We couldn't start thinking about that becoming a reality, and that is how it has evolved.
Marie, from the perspective of the automaker, how will initiatives like these partnerships, these collaborations, how will they affect Volvo Cars and your products?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see them as absolutely key if we would like to deliver on the future ambition that we have as a company, and I think as a society. We are involved in a lot of the organizations that Åsa mentioned, and we are also very keen on testing and trying out these new technologies together with partners. And that, of course, goes for 5G solutions, for example, and everything related to the telco area. But what I also think is interesting right now, when we see this connected car, it is that it's becoming part of a very, very, very large ecosystem. So the partners that we need to engage with today is not, of course we will have suppliers, traditional suppliers also, since still we have one big part of our product is still the car, but the product is becoming so much more. When we now look into electrification, for example, it's extremely important to have partners that we work with when it comes to charging and also the whole energy management. We know, for example, that if we don't find a way to incentivize and help our customers to charge their cars with renewable energy, the sustainability effects that we are after with the electrified cars will not be as great as we want them to be. So of course, this is an area where we need to find partners. And I would say also, if we look into the connected mobility ecosystem and our future dream of the optimized transportation flows in the cities and the V2X scenario, this is also really about partnering up, because here we cannot try out these things alone. We need to do that together. And that is, of course, also very important. Once again, I'm coming back to this sustainability. One thing that we talk about a lot also is, the idea around shared mobility. And for a car manufacturer, it is actually very important also to get the utilization degree up of cars. This is also something that we have been talking about a lot, since most of the cars are standing still most of the time. And that is, it's not sustainable to produce a car that is not used. So we want to get usage up when it comes to this. But what I also think is important here when we talk about collaborations, I mean, we can see collaborations in so many areas, and a connected car today is also so much more than just transporting someone from A to B. It is also very much about the total experience when you are approaching your car and when you are inside of your car. And another type of partnership that we have now at Volvo is also the partnership with Google. So we have the Google Automotive services in the car, which really enables our users to get a very personal experience in the car, downloading the apps you want, having your profile set when you enter the car. So, it feels like home to some extent. And this is now, once again, very much back to the software-defined car and the smartphone on wheels that we have talked about for a long time, I think, but we now actually see happening, where you over time will download different apps in your car and really personalize the experience over time. And I think that is also, as we said, a very, very, very big change that is happening now. And partnerships is absolutely key here.
These are very exciting innovations, really, really interesting sounding, sort of futuristic scenarios ultimately. And it is interesting to me that so much of them are driven by partnership. I think that manufacturers recognize now that they have to devolve a little bit of the control, as it were, of what goes into the vehicle to other people, and really to create that ecosystem where innovation happens. I am seeing that we have a lot of questions that are coming in. I have one more question, and it's for Tomas, and then I'm going to turn to our questions from Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And I can see that there are some really, really good ones, some challenging ones as well. Just so you guys are aware that you might have to be pushed a little bit in just a moment. But my last question actually is to Tomas. How do collaboration initiatives like the CCI support your vision for sustainability?
So one of the things we're launching now in the US is our collaboration with General Electric. It's a huge company who want to get to sustainable freight and has the same mission of going to a sustainable business model as we do. And it's something we're super excited about doing. But obviously, they're a huge company and have great demands when it comes to volume and moving of goods. So we are collaborating a lot with different partners to reach those volumes. And I think that's another piece around the whole collaboration part. Working together with manufacturing partners is another thing that maybe differentiates us from some of the other ones in the market, where we are looking at designing a system that we can take to our customers that fills the requirements of those, but we know that there's already partners in the market who can make sure that we get there faster, because we need to get to market as soon as possible with as many vehicles as possible to save as much CO2 as possible. With the initial deployment at General Electric, we're going to save 1,000 tons of CO2 per year, only from that. And as I've been talking about, getting all this connectivity connects all different parts of the ecosystem, which enables us to increase the utilization rate. Because exactly what, like Marie was saying, that's a super important part of having a great business model. If you can increase utilization, not only of the vehicles, but also of the chargers, of the personnel in the loading docks, of the loading docks themselves, and how you use all the resources in your overall transport ecosystem, that's when you can reach a really efficient and a good business model. And I think electrification needs utilization, because otherwise you can't have the utilization that you need. And when you have the utilization, that's when your systems can start talking to autonomous vehicles, which don't have humans in them, that can't open gates and figure out by themselves which dock to go to or how to communicate with personnel on a dock. Those are things that need to be digitized in order for this system to move over to being an automatable one. So I think some of these things are crucial when it comes to collaborating and making all of this happen.
I'm going to jump now over to some of these fantastic questions that we have. And the first one is a very provocative one. It comes in from Elizabeth. Elizabeth says, controversially, wouldn't the best thing for climate action excuse me, let me try that again. Wouldn't it be best for climate action to have no cars at all? And first, I'm going to throw this out to you, Tomas, because you are approaching this in one way. And then Marie, I'm going to ask you the same question, because I think it's important to know from a legacy, from a long-term manufacturer, how to respond to this question. So Tomas first.
So I think one really important part there is obviously going back to utilization. Today, the fulfillment rate of the system is something like 20%. So we could have a lot fewer vehicles than we have today. So I think it's very much right that, exactly as Marie was saying again, that we need to get those numbers down, what we need, because that's one of the most important ways we can achieve sustainability, actually using all the resources we have in our society. And I think that's something that we can really work a lot on, and that is super important for einride in order to reach our sustainability goals. I think obviously still we need to live and have good lives, and therefore I think we need to find a way how to have both good lives but also sustainable environment and society, because I think that's where we need to reach to really. So yeah, I think that's the way I see it.
Marie, how do you respond?
Yes, to take off where you ended, Tomas, I think this is it's really about finding the right mode of transportation depending on what you are going to do. I think people will you know, in the future as well, have the need to move around, and sometimes the car might be the best option. Sometimes an e-bike, or sometimes it's rather the train, depending on how long you are going and where you are living. So I think we need to realize that it is hard to eliminate different kinds of modes of transportation just because they're not good for the environment. But given all the developments that we have been talking about today, the electrification, and also the fact that we now have a software-defined car, we can improve the car during its lifetimes. I mean, we are on our way away from the fact that cars are bad. So I think we will see cars in the future as well.
Also, one of the questions that I have here from Deepak, I think you are the best person to answer it. Deepak asks, what are the major challenges in network infrastructure that you are facing in commercializing the autonomous vehicle for public usage?
I think it would be great to also hear Thomas answer there. But I think when it comes to the infrastructure as such, I mean, 5G is designed to be able to support that. But I think there's a lot of regulatory questions that are big, which is not about deploying 5G or not, but if you allow and where you allow autonomous drive. And here I think there's still a lot of development that is needed to be done, but it's also legal questions. So who's liable when there is an accident? When there's a human who drives and owns the car, it's very clear. How do you judge that when there's no one driving the car? So I think there's a number of quite tricky questions from a liability, insurance, or regulatory point of view that is beyond the tech question as such. So I wouldn't say the infrastructure is actually not the limiting factor. Of course, there's a time factor. When do you have that built out? But you can already have that in confined areas, and that's where it's being used today. So that's my view on it. Curious to hear Thomas' view.
So I think there is always things you can do in the infrastructure to improve your case. The way we go about autonomous vehicles is we kind of have the strategy of starting in very simple flows, so logistic flows, and where there still is a business case, and move over to cases where it's more complicated over time. It's a little bit different, but that's about getting early to market. And I think another important piece here, where logistics is different from, say, a robotaxi, is as we sell this movement of goods to our customers, the movement of pallets between point A and B, it means that we choose exactly where our vehicles go. And it's repetitive, boring flows that humans hate to drive. Those are the ones we want to take. They're simple, they're boring, they're stupid even, but they still have a business case and they need to get done. And so that's where we start off with the simple ones and go with more complicated ones. And in these predictable flows, we can then also invest in needed infrastructure to make them happen, so to say. And in combination with remote drivers, that does require some connectivity, or good connectivity. That's an important part, even though the remote operator is really mostly monitoring the autonomous drive while taking tactical decisions, as time critical decisions can be, though, improved with 5G and stuff, but still it's something that is rather limited by time, obviously.
We have a couple of comments and some thoughts. Saeed is thinking about an autonomous car where the route automatically changes depending upon the traffic. Or on LinkedIn, Daniel is saying that road-based charging will need to be prioritized in order to allow for long-distance travel. I see all of you are nodding. It seems to me that the people. Oh, actually, Thomas, you doesn't look like you're nodding entirely. Tell me why.
Well, I think some infrastructure can be limiting. I think if you add that, it can complicate, it can prolong the transition. As if that's a requirement for making this happen, then there is massive investments needed, and I think those need to happen for sure. But we can't wait for that for this to happen. So I think if you do the good digitization and understand the state of your battery at any given point, which ensures that you charge only as much as you need to, so that you can get to the next stage where you need to unload and maybe charge again. if you have great digitization where you really think about how you use all your resources, then you can go without having some of these massive infrastructure investments that would, dig up our roads for some time in order to make it happen. So I think it is true to some extent, but also we shouldn't wait for it. We need to make this happen either way.
Marie, there are certain preconceptions about the automotive industry and cars in general. We are told that America's biggest air quality compromisers are vehicles, producing about a third of all US air pollution. Is this a myth? Are cars really gas guzzlers that pollute the air and depreciate their value as soon as they hit the road?
Well, as I said earlier, unfortunately, if we look at this question, I mean, the car industry has definitely been part of the problem that we now are facing on a global basis. And that is also why we have to be a part of the solution, as I said. So, I mean, this is happening all across the industry right now to transform into becoming electric. So I would definitely say that, yes, unfortunately, we have been part of the problem, but we as an industry is now also taking responsibility to move into something that is much better for all of us. Because also from Volvo Cars perspective, I mean, we have always have had safety as part of our DNA. Everyone thinks about safety when you think about Volvo Cars. And today we would actually like to say also that sustainability is safety. Because if we don't have a sustainable planet to live in, that will not be a safe place.
Also, there is a question from... Oh, please jump in. Yeah, I was going to ask you a question, but
I think it's also interesting to see where we are today, because today, if you look at the consumers, the investors, they actually value those who are at the forefront of electrification, of sustainability and of safety. And I think it's too early to talk about Volvo's valuation at this point in time, given the recent IPO. But if you look at Tesla and the valuation they have, I mean, I think it says something about the competitive pressure to be a leader and a pioneer in this field. And those who are not on the boat, who's not ahead and pushing and investing into electrification, in the digitization and a new type of car experience, they will fall behind. So I think it's not only, I think it's not even valid anymore to talk about that industry is not investing in this area. It's actually a necessity to survive in that industry today. And I think that's quite promising. And as we start to see all the entrepreneurship and innovation being funneled in that direction, I'm quite hopeful about what type of future we can design when it comes to transportation and the industry of automotive OEMs.
Well, on that note of hope, is the best place, I think, for us to end today. Thank you so much to Marie, to Thomas, and to Åsa. These are exciting times for technology, and nowhere more so than in the automotive sector. It is clear that when it comes to how we drive, nothing will ever be the same again. Now, if you have enjoyed this broadcast, please do keep commenting and sharing. And remember to log on for the next in Ericsson's Social Series broadcast, timed to coincide with the UN's Conference on Climate Change, which is happening, of course, this week. What can tech do to help with climate action? Join us to find out. Goodbye for now.